I've got two stories to tell, and they're connected in a way that still unsettles me. My name's David, and years ago I worked the graveyard shift at a gas station convenience store planted in the middle of nowhere. This was back before high-definition cameras watched your every move and security systems covered every blind spot. It's not that security tech didn't exist, it just wasn't a priority. And the owner, let's just say investing in anything that cost money wasn't his strong suit. Still, I didn't mind. The job itself was painfully easy. The hardest part was dealing with him. The guy had the memory of a goldfish. We'd argue about the same two issues multiple times a week, and every time it felt like he was hearing it for the first time. He'd recycle the same complaints, and I'd recycle the same explanations. It was like living in a loop. But none of that mattered once the sun went down, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It was usually just me, no coworkers, barely any customers, just long stretches of silence and the slow crawl of time, most nights blurred together. I'd lean against the counter with a magazine, fighting off the kind of boredom that seeps into your bones and makes your eyelids heavy. The store had this strange ability to compress the worst hours of the night into one endless miserable moment. I don't remember the exact time that night, 2 a.m., maybe later, but I remember the silence. The faint electric buzz of the old fluorescent lights was the only sound, and I'd gotten so used to it that it felt like background static in my skull. So when the front door suddenly chimed, it was like a gunshot. My head snapped up. A man walked in. Tall, early 30s, maybe. Solid build. My first thought was former athlete. But that thought died quickly, because he was covered in blood. And I mean covered. At first, my brain tried to rationalize it, paint, maybe some kind of prank. But no, there was a thick splatter across his chest, streaks down his arms, smeared along his face. It wasn't a small stain you could explain away. It was excessive, almost cartoonish. The kind of visual that doesn't register because it doesn't belong in normal life. For a few seconds, my mind just froze, trying to file the image into some familiar category and failing completely. But what truly shook me wasn't the blood. It was his eyes. They were hollow. Not angry, not panicked. Just empty. Like whatever should have been behind them had shut off. And he walked in like it was any other ordinary night. He looked completely normal. Calm, almost bored, like he'd just stopped in for a soda on a random Tuesday night. The most disturbing part was how comfortable he seemed in his own skin, despite the fact that he was soaked in what was very obviously blood. I'm spelling this out so you understand something. My reaction wasn't dramatic or exaggerated. It wasn't weakness. It was raw, instinctive fear. Anyone in that position would have felt it. My body locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. All I could do was stare at him, which logically I knew was the worst possible thing to do. But I couldn't stop. Every time I forced myself to glance away, my eyes snapped right back to his. It was like my brain needed to confirm he was real. Of course he noticed. I wasn't exactly subtle. I don't know what I expected. Anger, maybe. Aggression. What I didn't expect was a smile. Slow, casual, almost friendly. Then, in the calmest voice imaginable, he said, "Don't worry. It's not my blood." Like that was supposed to comfort me. Like that somehow made the situation better. It didn't. If anything, that's when the alarms really went off in my head. Not my blood. Then whose? My thoughts spiraled instantly. He killed someone. He just came from a crime scene. I'm next. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every worst case scenario played out in a split second. But somewhere in that chaos, survival instinct took over. I did the only thing I could think of. I pretended everything was normal. I gave a small nod like he just commented on the weather and lowered my head back to the magazine as if I were deeply invested in whatever page I'd been reading. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched him wander the aisles. No rush, no panic. He picked up a few random items like this was part of a routine errand. When he approached the counter, I braced myself. Honestly, I half expected him to just take what he wanted and walk out. I probably wouldn't have tried to stop him. Instead, he placed the items down neatly. I rang them up with shaking hands, careful, very careful, not to meet his eyes again. The sooner this transaction ended, the better. He paid in cash, exact bills, no small talk, no explanation. Then the door chimed, and just like that, he was gone. For a split second, the store was silent again. Then I heard a car engine turn over somewhere in the parking lot. That sound snapped me back to reality. I lunged for the phone and dialed 911. I told the dispatcher everything, what he looked like. The blood, what he said. I admitted I didn't know what had happened, but I was certain something had. You don't walk into a gas station at 2 a.m. covered in blood for no reason. The dispatcher started asking follow-up questions, trying to piece together details. I was mid-sentence describing his height again when the front door chimed. My stomach dropped. Great, I thought. Another customer. Exactly what I didn't need. But I was wrong. It wasn't another customer, it was him. The same guy I had just finished describing to the police. The door hadn't even stopped swinging when I recognized him, and this time there was no blank expression. He looked furious. Not irritated, not annoyed. Furious. I slammed the phone down, but the damage was done. He'd seen me. He must have spotted me through the front window with the receiver to my ear. He knew exactly what I was doing. He marched straight to the counter, eyes locked on me, and demanded to know if I'd called the cops. I denied it instantly, maybe too quickly. He didn't believe me for a second, not even close. His jaw tightened, and his whole posture shifted from tense to explosive. Within seconds, he was swearing at me, telling me to mind my own business, accusing me of lying to his face. I raised my hands, palms out, trying to show I wasn't a threat. I kept my voice low, calm, hoping to cool things down. But there was no calming him down. His voice kept rising, echoing off the empty aisles, and those once hollow eyes were now burning with rage. At first, I thought he was just going to keep yelling. Maybe shove the counter, maybe knock something over. I was wrong. I saw the movement a fraction of a second too late. He didn't climb over the counter, he launched himself over it. 1 second he was on the other side, the next he was airborne, and then we were both crashing to the floor. I didn't even have time to throw my hands up. In what felt like 2 heartbeats, he went from shouting to wrapping his hands around my throat. Suddenly, I wasn't an employee behind a register. I was a guy pinned to the ground, fighting for air. I had never been in a fight before that night. Not a real one. And I was absolutely certain he was trying to kill me. My vision blurred. My lungs burned. I thrashed like an animal, kicking, scratching, clawing at his arms, even biting when I could. There was no technique, no strategy, just survival. I could feel the sticky wetness of blood, someone else's, I didn't know, smearing across my face and soaking into my clothes as we struggled. The metallic smell filled my nose. It was chaos. We were still grappling on the floor when I realized I was running out of strength. So I did the only thing I could think of. I yelled that I had a gun and that I wasn't afraid to use it. It was a total bluff. I didn't own a gun, but desperation can make you sound convincing. Something in my voice must have hit differently because he froze just for a second. Then he shoved himself off me and sprinted for the door. I lay there gasping, too stunned to move as the door chimed again and his footsteps faded. A moment later, I heard his car tear out of the parking lot. I didn't get up right away. I just stayed on the floor, staring at the ceiling, shaking, covered in a mix of my blood and someone else's. My throat throbbed. My whole body hurt. Time felt distorted. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. When they saw the condition I was in, they immediately radioed it in and took off to try to find him. I expected follow-up calls, updates, something. But I never heard another word. No arrest, no explanation, nothing on the news. It was like the whole thing disappeared into thin air. To this day, it remains the most terrifying physical experience of my life and the closest I've ever felt to not walking away from a night shift.